Docking request accepted.
Good morning, New Eden. Today is July 6th, 2025, and this is the Federation Frontline Report. I'm your host, Frozen Fallout, and today we are not interviewing Neptune. I'm sorry, I need to fix this here real quick. Interview with. We are going to be interviewing Bendery and Hecate. How's it going?
Going well. Hello.
And we do have, and we do have my awesome co-host Night Flyer here that's going to be with us. I'm just totally thrown off because I keep on forgetting to update this lower thirds here.
Oh, it looks beautiful, but it wouldn't be if we weren't screwing stuff up.
Yeah, no, the beginning is always chaos. That's kind of a little bit what I'm going for these days with the beginning of our show is we spend the first little bit fixing things.
Yeah, trying to get into our groove, just having some fun. It's kind of like the way we play, you know?
Yeah.
We start off a little rough, but in the end, we usually have a good time, so.
Shake out the nerves early.
Absolutely.
Awesome. And so tell me, so I'll start kind of one at a time with this question here. But Bendery, how did you get into Eve Frontier? And that is one thing that we're going to be talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, is the new game, Eve Frontier. I got myself two massive experts that know everything about the game, have talked to the devs and know all the secrets. They're willing to spill all the beans, so...
So I got into Frontier because I was playing Eve, and I got the email that was like, we're, having a closed alpha for this game. Do you want to sign up for it? And I just signed up for it and decided to check it out one day. And lo and behold, it just kind of sucked me in, and I've been kind of obsessed about it ever since.
Awesome. And Hecate, how did you get into Eve Frontier?
Yeah, so I'd been an Eve online player back in college, and I had a coworker actually tell me about Eve Frontier, which is really surprising because I think I maybe mentioned to him that I played Eve Online like 3 years ago, and he somehow remembered that and was like, "Hey, have you heard about this game? Have you played it?" And I'm like, "What?" And I read about it. I was like, "That sounds intriguing," and sort of got into it, and it's been about a year, I guess, since then.
Okay, so you guys have been kind of trying to get in nice, deep, and early into the beta of this, and it reminds me, I remember doing personally, I did a lot of beta testing back in 2003 when Eve Online was coming out. So we did Neocron, and we had come from the Ultima Online, which was very much what Eve kind of was the future of Ultima Online when it comes to the PvP focused kind of epic, marketing system that they had that was very different, and infinite housing instead of, well, not infinite, I guess, in the beginning. Anyways, awesome. So you guys kind of started off in Eve, heard about this Eve Frontiers. So what can you tell me about what's if when you jump into Eve Frontier, what is Eve Frontier at this point? If somebody was to start up an account, how would you say their first 30 to 40 minutes are going to go?
So I would think that now is actually probably a good place to start. With that first experience, they have it a little more tuned. So they don't just throw you in and say, "Here's your Rubik's Cube, go fuck yourself," which they definitely did in the early stages.
Yeah, 100%. What am I trying to do? Why am I mining? I don't even know. That
So now they have
quest, yeah.
Just like Eve, man, because that's how I felt when I jumped. That's the reason why I didn't play Eve for 3 years, is because when I first started Eve, it was here's a frigate, go. And you're like, go where? And they're like, there are no missions, go, do. And you're like, what do you mean, go do?
Yeah, now we have
Okay,
something kind
Tomo
of
is done.
closer to Aura. So you're gonna start with a guided tutorial that's like, hey, here's a little safe instance. This is the only place in space you're ever going to be safe. Mine this rock, build your first piece of infrastructure, and learn how to recycle or reprocess. Learn how to gather and build. They kind of just teach you the fundamentals.
So from
And then-
also from one of my understandings is that the skills, there is no skill system. So a big difference between like EVE Online and Frontier at this point in time is that you don't have to like any barriers to. It's more like from my interpretation that I've taken so far is like Minecraft. It's like you kind of like start off with a character that can do anything as long as he's got the materials to do it, right? And time.
Yeah, the resources are definitely your barrier. If you can build the ship, you can fly it, but do you have the fuel for it? Do you have the fittings for it? Good luck.
So is much of the beginning gameplay that level of like go find these materials, build these items, and slowly builds you up as to like, you know, take you from would you say like a more natural experience in this game is to like kind of go out and build your own stuff, or are you going to market and being able to be like I can just mine one item for like for like 5 years and then I'll just go sell it on the market?
Currently, that is not in the game design. If you wanted to buy something, someone else would have had to have made it. And they are struggling with the same level of resource scarcity that you are and resource gathering. So the flow currently, when you start from the tutorial and you build your first ship and they get you into your first kind of real exploration ship, they then want to shift you to exploring the universe, because that's really what the game is based about. It's going out and exploring. And as you explore, that's where you start to find the resources that you need to build bigger and better ships. So they don't kind of shove you into a factory and then expect you to come out as a fully leveled character.
And so this would
Which
be,
I think is
just
great.
Yeah, so this would be something that is much more akin to Minecraft, where it's like you're not dropped into a civilization. So in EVE, at the very least, you're dropped into a civilization. It says there's a bunch of markets, people are here, they're selling their goods. There's a lot of like, you know, it's all from the players, but it's really not all, you know, like the infrastructure, the roads, the gates, everything was built by NPCs. They maintain this, and you can kind of go off and own your own thing. But for the most part, everywhere is kind of like civilized, right? This sounds much more like uncivilized, where you kind of like are dropped in the middle of nowhere and said, go build, you need to do a bunch of stuff in order to actually acquire these new items. Where even in EVE, maybe in the beginning, but you know, at this point in time, for sure, the first thing that you do is like go out and be able to purchase items and get ships and stuff like that from other players in this game. Just like I just go right next door. You know, actually, I go in the system and dock up and go into the station. So, do you start off in like any kind of civilization? Are you able to dock at a station, or?
So for the first maybe hour-ish, if you are going directly to the end point of the tutorial, you're in a system with no station. There might be a player there. You might be competing for resources. You might be knife fighting in a desert for water. Has happened at the start of the cycle. Players killing each other for resourcing because they realized there wasn't enough in the system to exit.
If you get killed, are you just respawned in that system, or what kind of happens?
You respawn in a different system and you restart.
Oh wow, so it's like a full-on restart. So this definitely sounds like, so that one of the things that I was concerned about, and it wasn't until FanFest, and this is where I met Bendery, was at FanFest, and it was super cool hanging out with them and learning about this Frontier, because at first I was like, I hate CCP. I was like, I'm so mad about Frontier. Like, that is the one game that I will never play, I will never touch, and I'm so mad about them trying to make this game, because it's going to be EVE 2, and they're just calling it EVE Frontier, and it's going to be, you know, just a really better EVE. And it doesn't sound like a better EVE, it sounds like a very different thing inside of the universe that is much more akin to everything that I'm kind of hearing is much more about like Minecraft. Like it's like build up your own shit, but it's more like Minecraft multiplayer, like with one persistent universe. So, but one thing I did hear is that it resets, right? So every 3 months, it's kind of like a seasonal thing right now, that the game like fully puts you back at 0, and everybody dies basically at the end of 3 months.
Yeah, that's accurate. So the play cycle is sort of telling a story, and that story is that the universe has kind of died off, and the hubris of the previous inhabitants has made a hostile world kind of uninhabitable. So I've compared it to a famous Disney movie about a robot and cleaning up the earth in the past, where every cycle is, have we cleaned up the galaxy enough, or has the galaxy been cleaned up enough to start civilization again? And no, it hasn't, because the things that are messing up the galaxy have now shown up and destroyed everything we just built. And we're gonna wake up in a billion years and see if maybe they've died, if those machinations and monsters we've created have died off, and try and rebuild civilization again.
First, I think it's important that we backtrack just for a sec to your previous thought about what this game is compared to Eve, because from having played both and what I know about the two games, other than sharing the name Eve and taking part in space, and there's that's really it. Like,
Even
I think this is kind of do like an analogy. This is as much like comparing Smash Brothers with Luigi's Haunted Thing. Yeah, they take part in name, but they are two totally, completely different games with different outcomes and different understanding. There, actually. So you're not in the same world. Like, this isn't a prequel. It's not a sequel. This is a different game. Like, and I think it's important that a lot of people kind of understand that. So, I mean, Hecate, do you think that's a fair analogy, or do you think that there's more to this?
Yeah, I think it's a fair analogy. Sort of going back to what you said earlier, the EVE Online is like you're dropped into a civilization and you're finding your way. EVE Frontier is you're dropped into nothing and you build a civilization, or maybe not. Maybe you just implode.
So are you?
That's why.
How do you?
That's why I did like Bendery's kind of explanation too of like of that Disney movie with the robot of like, can this planet sustain life? All right, let's check out these planets and where are we now before we start kind of incorporating. I think that's kind of a good picture to kind of put yourself in this game, is we have to rebuild a civilization so it gets to the point where we can actually rebuild a civilization.
So speaking of civilization building, how do you actually interact with each other in game? If you're dropped off in the middle of the system, do I have to find a Stargate, or do I have a jump drive to get to, or can I warp to another system?
Yeah, so initially or at least in this current cycle, the way it functions is you're given a ship that you start out in. It's your bare bones Corvette or whatever, and you have to build a ship that's jump capable, and most of the ships in the game are jump capable. Some of them have basically no range, which means you're sort of like hopscotching or jumping from like system to system to get to an area that has gates, and those areas that have gates are previous like civilizations. Like the whole setting of EVE Frontier is like it's a discarded galaxy that's all organic life is completely gone, and it's only inhabited by drones, some feral and some just doing the thing they've been doing for millennia. And in order to sort of get to the infrastructure, you need to first build a ship that's capable of jumping out of your existing system, and that's the tutorial.
And so once you jump out, you are in the active world with all the other players.
Well, you're in the active world in the first system.
Yeah, so you can start with somebody randomly. Now there is like how many thousands of systems? Like it's way more than Eve. 24,000, so way bigger than Eve at this point. Hey, there's a puppy.
Oh, your dog busted in.
Yes, I have a little puppy here. What's up? But yeah, so it sounds like it. One of the things that one of our viewers said here is, so currently the cycles are pre-release thing. We were kind of talking a little bit before the show on this. Um, do you see the lore heading? Where do you see the lore heading after release? I guess is what they're kind of focusing on. And also, I kind of want to know: do you think that they're going to continue the repeating of where they reset you every 3 months, a seasonal system, or are they going to go more persistent?
I guess that's one of the benefits of them actually spinning up these worlds on blockchain and a public ledger, is that if they really wanted to spin up multiple cycles or multiple timelines, they could easily. And they could branch off in different directions if they wanted to. And I think we're going to see a lot of experimentation on their end. Like, does this actually work in a 3-month cycle? Are our players having a good time? And the fact that the devs are actually playing with us, like alongside us, and participating in events and really engaging with the community, kind of leads me to believe that if we don't like it, they're gonna find something that actually works.
So what is the whole lore behind the cycles, and what's I guess the lore in the game right now? Let's focus on one of the things that we don't focus on Eve very much, but maybe it's important in Frontiers. Is the lore important, and what is the lore of Eve Frontiers?
They really go for more of a Dark Souls style of storytelling. So we're learning about the civilizations that existed in the universe through the discarded items that are left behind. So we do get lots of different lore items that tell us a little bit about like how music existed in some of these civilizations, how they would handle authority for jump gates. And in building these different civilizations through storytelling, through like what they've left behind, they're really kind of trying to build a story that's not so much about the galaxy and a narrative that leads players through this epic space opera, and they're trying to tell the story of survival, of the birth and origin of civilization, what causes people to fall, what causes civilizations to succeed. And we do see that there are some civilizations in the galaxy that span thousands and thousands of stars. There are some that exist only in the name of a system that for some reason we still call it by this name despite forgetting who originally named it.
Interesting. So it's much more of a personal lore kind of system. Are you learning about, is there any lore that kind of tells you like what's going on with the cycles or anything like that? Or is it just at this point in time, like you said, focused really just on the civilizations that you're finding? I guess it's Indiana Jones shit, right?
Yeah, it's archaeological.
Like you're a Picard.
And they do bring that into the game a little bit. There are some sites now that you actually navigate through closed overhead environments, and it creates this claustrophobia and this sense of intenseness and tension that isn't really present in Eve.
What are the collision mechanics? Can you hit something with your ship and it does damage?
I haven't actually hit anything that does damage to the ship, but because your ship has a front orientation and a back orientation, as well as your guns have a preferred angle, your ship has a hit surface, and if you're fighting and you bounce off a pole and suddenly you're showing your bare ass to whatever you were fighting, you are going to take a ton of damage. So the navigation around objects, using objects for cover from the occlusion mechanics, you can get enemies to shoot each other by tracking their shots in front of each other. You can accidentally shoot your own allies, which in one of the first major combats we had with Rooks and Kings, a an Eve vet of a long time accidentally drifted into the firing line, and one of the first battleship kills was taking an entire alpha from his own team. So you just float a little too far ahead. Yep. And it's that kind of tension, knowing, oh no, I'm facing the wrong way. I'm gonna take a wrecking shot right now, and my armor rep is off, and I'm running out of fuel. And just having to be aware of your space adds just a new level of tension to the game.
It's also because you're super close together. Like when you're flying with people, you're not flying like 50K apart or whatever. Typically you're like close in on where you're at, and it can be very easy to completely miss something coming on grid. And there have been engagements in the past where people forgot to pay attention and lost track of the fact that like a small enemy fleet like showed up right behind them or was sitting behind a rock and they didn't notice because they weren't looking at
the Moon Eater battle.
Yeah.
Moon Eater battle.
Jotun did a CCP Jotun did a I don't know, like a game, I guess, yesterday, and got popped in 4 minutes because he wasn't paying attention, and somebody showed up on on grid before he realized and shot him in the back. And yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, I do like the idea of there being like if you go behind, because like you all see that in like movies, like Wrath of Khan did that whole thing, you know, like hiding behind the moon. Like you always, like whenever they come up and they're approaching something, they're like, where's the moon? I'm gonna hide behind that. You know, like, and that's really because, I mean, really, unless there's some kind of weird, you know, magic science happening, like you can't see through a fucking moon. You don't know what's on the other fucking side unless you have sensors on the other side of the moon. Like that's how this works. Even with, you know, magic wormhole technology, you know, unless you're really pushing it out there. And Eve definitely has that, where it's like we have complete understanding of tactical grid operations, and no worry of like putting like 5,000 because I could imagine, I just want to see, I do, now that I know more about Frontier, I do want to see like in the future like 5,000 versus 5,000 in Eve Frontier, where people are just shooting each other a lot. Like there's this, like so much, like there's this, you're gonna have like so much insanity because you're gonna have the ability, like you said, to have a small fleet hide behind, you know, like watch something to a certain degree, like have a few scouts out letting them know what's going on. Well, you hide an entire fleet behind a moon, and you can like jump people, you know, with much greater like strategic, because you guys don't have local, right? So you don't have the ability to say, I know who's in my system, or do you have an understanding of numbers in the system?
So yeah, no, you don't get any real information about who's in the system with you. Local operates like wormhole chat. If you say hello, people will know you're there, but you won't necessarily know they're there. There's been some discussions and some shenanigans going on with the moddable structures to try and create some sort of system that allows you to monitor who comes in and comes out. But with the way that someone can just jump into the system, there's no way of really monitoring infrastructure unless you monitor every possible location someone can land. And that would be very resource intensive.
So you bring up something that might be a big, huge side tangent here, but I really, you brought up moddable structures. So there seems to be like the ability, so one of the things that's, you know, there's a couple interesting new concepts that seems to be coming out with Eve Frontier, and one of them is that you're able to make more moddable structures. Similar, from what I'm kind of hearing of, like if it was, you know, an MMORPG, your kind of access is much greater on the code level. Is that not true? Or what are you able to do on a code level that's different than, say, you know, any other game that you've played?
A lot. You can of the items that are in the game that are on chain. So on chain, I guess backing up, Eve Frontier sort of like sits on top of a blockchain, which is like a technology for allowing people who don't trust each other to coordinate using a sort of like shared set of rules. And the result of that is that things like object persistence. So if you have an item or something and you put it into a smart deployable, the item shows up on chain somewhere in the smart deployable table of some sort. The smart deployable's deployment shows up on a table somewhere. The status of the deployable, is it destroyed? Is it anchored? Is it fueled? Is it online? All that is on chain in some way. Character objects are on chain. Tribe participation is on chain. A bunch of stuff like that. So the result of that is that you can sort of compose all those things together, and you can deploy a deployable turret. And the turret maybe has a fire control mechanism that only fires on in-person or on characters whose name starts with the letter F or something. You can do that if you want to. You can have it fire at no neutrals. So not fire at neutrals, not fire at blues, but fire at reds. You can set it to fire at blues if you want, for some reason. Don't know why you would want to do that, but you could do that. And it's like those sort of like the composability of all of it allows you to do like a lot of unique things that aren't sort of available in a game, most other games. And
you're not able to access like a Python code level, like like you're not actually coding at this point, are you able to do much more deep kind of like dives into these items?
Yeah, so players can code and change the functionality of specific structures. So the current structures we have are we have like storage units, which they can range from like small ones to large ones. We have turrets, which I mentioned. There's like fire control mechanisms you can control. There are gates, which are much harder to build in this cycle, but in previous cycles they're a lot easier to build, and that's sort of like highway infrastructure. It allows you to more rapidly move across the galaxy at like longer distances. And I feel like I'm forgetting something. Maybe I'm not forgetting something.
Just the storage units, the gates, and the...
Yeah, we have network nodes, I guess, now, which enable you to build sort of like webbed infrastructure. I think this is one of the reasons why I don't think we're going to continue doing the cycle thing.
Okay, so you're thinking... Well, I guess that's one of the things that I kind of thought was interesting, is that if you're going to do a blockchain, but you're going to have a seasonal kind of effect to it, like how do you create permanence? Like how are they creating permanence right now? Are you tied into having to spend, or can you spend Ethereum at this point in the game?
Yeah, so the game doesn't function on the Ethereum blockchain. Currently it's running on a testnet of Ethereum, and the testnet is actually in a layer 2 testnet. And what that means is it's cheaper for gas fees because it makes a trade-off between decentralization, which is sort of like the part you pay a lot of money for, and like velocity, like transaction throughput. So you get higher transaction throughput at less decentralization. So we're functioning on a layer 2 that has that higher throughput. And it's a test net, so the gas fees you're paying are 0. They're free because it's intended to be used for developer tooling and like practicing developer tooling. So that's where we're currently at. In the future, it'll be on an L2 where the gas is paid in ETH, but because it's on an L2, the gas consumption is very, very low, and gas is like transaction fees. I think we did some math, and it was like 1/10,000th of a penny for a transaction, so it's like basically nothing for most use cases. So that's the sort of like high level where the infrastructure will be.
So if I wanted to spend money and buy Ethereum and do something with it in the game, what can I do with Ethereum in the game at this point?
Yeah, at this point, nothing really. You can deploy contracts.
What would be the thing that you think that what they're moving towards?
It depends on a lot of factors. One, it's not really clear if we will use ETH at all in the game. Most people aren't really like that, and a lot of people are really skeptical of sort of like cryptocurrencies, like for the currency part. So it's not really clear if people actually end up using them in that way.
Okay.
Yeah, so far it seems like the idea of using actual cryptocurrencies or the pay to earn kind of model that a lot of people get really fed up with in Web3 projects isn't a factor in Frontier. Like they didn't want to take Frontier in that direction, and it still seems like they have no intention of moving it in that direction. So I guess with Hecate can correct me if I'm wrong. If someone wanted to twist themselves into some sort of crypto pretzel and move the Frontier kind of currency at launch into an actual Ethereum coin, there might be a methodology to do that just with the way the interoperability of blockchain is, but they would have to go through some incredibly extensive steps to do it and develop their own process.
Yeah, it'd be a good bit of work.
Okay, so it doesn't have, at this point, the focus is not on the blockchain aspect of the game. That's like, it's something that's there, but they're like, well, how do we use it? Because it sounded like, because one of the things that I've always heard about blockchain in video games and combining them together is this idea of like, you've got like an item and now it's on the blockchain and now it exists. It's like, it's a thing that is more real than it was when it was just owned by CCP. When CCP gave me a battleship, then I've got a battleship from CCP. If I've got a black battleship on the Ethereum chain, just like my, whatever picture of Einstein that I bought, EFT or whatever the fuck those things are called that never went anywhere. But like it, like there's an item that exists on the chain that says that this is a unique item. And you could use that in the game. The one things I've heard with that is like, well, if you do that, then when somebody steals all your shit, then they stole it. It's gone. Doesn't matter. Like, there's nothing, you can't go back and fix that. You don't control the blockchain. It has ownership based on ownership, basically. But it would create like a more ownership on something. But it sounds like this is not something that's going in and saying that go and buy Ethereum, get a ship.
No, definitely not like that. No, the current, I guess maybe sort of like a higher level. We're at like civilization baby steps, like step 0, which is create a warehouse that you and your friends can share resources in. That's where we're at. We're nowhere near currencies and trade hubs and stuff like that. So we likely won't be for a while. If we do get there, it's very unlikely we would actually use ETH or Bitcoin of some sort, some token wrap thing. It's unlikely because it introduces a lot of complexity. People need to start accounting for it on their taxes. You run into regulation in foreign countries. I think nobody really wants to do that. Well, I'm sure somebody does, but most people really don't want to deal with all that for playing a video game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very likely most of the currencies, if we actually get to the point at which a civilization has currencies, would be my tribe issues me tribe token for mining for them for an hour, or I get tribe loyalty points for participating in a fleet, and if I gain sufficient tribe loyalty points, I can trade it for SRP, like ship replacement.
Okay,
but we're not anywhere near, so. Yeah.
So one of the things you bring up is like this idea of rebuilding civilization. How are you rebuilding civilization in the game?
Yeah, so in the current playtest, which we're cycling every 2-3 months, we are mostly players are going and aggregating into tribes. There's a large number of people who just come in and exist in the game ephemerally for a few days and then quit. Because they don't want to put effort in when they have to redo. Like they just want to see the mechanisms and the mechanics of the game. The players who stick around are trying to do those things like create a warehouse, create like a tribe storage using the shared storage components. It's creating turret fire control systems that don't fire on your allies, or ways to manage them. It could be things like extremely like bare bones primitives. How do you create multiple systems that function on top of the same storage? How do you share the same storage space? How do you manage a tribe treasury? Those types of things. So it's like it's building blocks still at this current point. But eventually, in theory, the building blocks will be stable, and then you can use them to build other things. So at some point, somebody's going to want to run trade, which means having a storage system that's capable of functioning like a marketplace, or having a currency. And those things require building as well. So you have to get to that point where you have all these basic building blocks, you can build other things on top of it, and then build other things on top of it, continue on until you have like commodities futures and like various other things to like control your supply chain for your industry and whatnot. But those are, again, years and years down the road. So it will take a long time to get there.
And yeah, that's, as far as the rebuilding society, there's definitely that component of like, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. And that does attract people to your regions. So we've seen a lot of the more successful tribes just be more focused on that actual infrastructure piece. Or there's a lot of social questions and social design that needs to be done. The large block style of tribe or syndicate or corporation alliance meets a weird it has a certain kind of component to it, because you can't just exist in your own microcosm. And the idea of owning a vast swath of space that has NPCs that are aggressive, not just players that are aggressive, how far can you expand if you're doing nothing but making enemies? So we've seen corporations form as closed societies and then change their mind and be like, wait, we want players, let's try and be more of an accommodating group of people. Or start as an open society and be like, oh no, we're currently being swarmed by people who are freeloading, and we're now open to getting blown up. People are coming in and saying they're friendly, and we've created this entire mess. And you have to create some sort of, there's no real like reputation system. So a user went out and kind of built a reputation system to kind of monitor kills on chain, to answer the societal question: how do we find bad actors in our area and keep players safe when we can't monitor everything that's going on? A ship has to be inspected in a specific way in order for you to see who's actually piloting it. So you can get blown up and not know who killed you. And
so you're not generated a kill mail like that shows you what happens, like who killed you when you die.
You're currently getting that. So you'll see the pilot who killed you after you get the kill mail, but they can just change the name of their ship, hop back on grid, and do you know if that's the same person or not? There's a certain level of paranoia that starts to kind of drill into you, and you have to find this this balance with your players and your corporation members of how do we, as a group of people, act together and manage conflict.
So are you able to change your name? Is the name of your ship more important than the name of your character? Is that what you were saying? Or like,
it is the first thing anyone sees unless they take the extra steps to inspect your ship. And there's no grid that tells you what the pilot is or what tribe they're a member of. You don't see whether you have them marked red or blue. They're just on grid with you. They look exactly like every other ship.
Yep.
Wow.
There's no overview. You can't just like look at a table and see this is blah 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 from this alliance or this corp. You can't do that. Come on grid, they're neutral. Your heart like goes up to 190 beats per minute, and then you show info to see who it is, and it's your friend.
Okay, so you got to do some extra steps rather than just look at a table. You've got to dig into the table and say, okay, there's a ship that's on the table. The ship name is on the table, but you don't know if that's who that is until you dig into that table.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to remove that because they're leaning into that. Like you don't know what you don't know at this point. They're leaning into that pretty hard. So I wouldn't be surprised if they remove the ability to show info on a ship.
Oh
yeah,
really?
Really be very fun.
Information being a premium and being a scarce resource is definitely one of the design philosophies, and I think that's also why they push. They're doing the blockchain part of it, because that's kind of their armistice with us, is like, well, we will give you access to some data and we will let you do a lot of things with it, but there's going to be a lot of data that you don't get to see that is only visible to the client. And we got to figure out with the tools that they gave us how we can give ourselves an edge in the universe in that information space.
Awesome. So yeah, so one of the things that I think that is going to be interesting is if they don't go persistent, or if they do go persistent with the world, and they've put it out there that this is not going to be a repeating cycle kind of thing. Do you think that civilization will eventually rebuild fully to a point where it's going to be kind of similar to what you get with Eve, where when you log in, eventually you're going to have, like, you know, a station right there, a storage facility you can just go dock up and get all the newest, brand new items that are going to be inside the game?
I don't think so. I think the mechanisms in the game, as far as like the fuel consumption, having like, you need fuel to do anything, you need fuel to mine, you need fuel to warp, you need fuel to jump, all of that. That sort of precludes you not being super aggregated, because currently it's not even really feasible to mine fuel elsewhere and then ship it somewhere. It's just too heavy. Like, it has too much. It takes up too much space in your ship. How far you can jump is based off the weight of your ship and how much fuel your ship can maintain. And also like heat, which is another system, but. Yeah, currently it's not even economically feasible to live in a big agglomeration of people. It's just not doable. So I don't know if that'll maintain for a long time, but I find it likely they'll sort of come up with systems that sort of keep everybody separated, and you're going more with like the people down the street, not the people in the country next door.
Yeah, I think that there's like a possibility that large groups of determined players may be able to create a functioning society for a period of time, but then they kind of have to deal with the design of the game and CCP's involvement, where is when are they going to introduce a threat to keep those players engaged and to also test the limits of the society. So there is kind of this little, like, almost mad scientist in the lab rat kind of situation that you can sometimes feel in the founder situation, where, you know, they are trying to poke and prod us and see how we are going to build these civilizations and see how resilient the player base is going to be to these aggressive mechanisms that are designed to keep balance in the environment.
So one of the balances that they have is decay, right? Is that something that you guys are dealing with right now?
Not in the current playtest. In a previous playtest, and I really hope they bring this back because it was so much fun. They had this like mechanism in place where they're the sort of like NPC enemies in the galaxy or the trinary is feral drones. So these are drones that were operated by AI maybe, or they had a specific like task that they were designated to do thousands of years ago when they were created, or millions potentially, and it's sort of become decayed by entropy over time. And now they sort of attack on sight. Maybe they like limp along after you, but they don't attack until you attack them, or come in proximity or something. In a previous playtest, they had it such where those feral drones would show up in random systems, but particularly they would concentrate in systems in which players were most active, and they would sit on gates and stuff, and they were strong enough in previous playtests where if you were in anything larger than a Corvette, you'd be like blapped as soon as you came out of the gate invisibility. So gates became completely unusable. And that's sort of like the decay mechanism that they're talking about. Like, the more you do stuff, the more attention you pull. And
yeah, and
it's super fun. But yeah. We'll see.
And yeah, that mechanic was kind of fueled by a second part where there were sites within the system that spawned these rats at specific moments, and the rats kind of drifted off into space. You'd kind of fly into one of these systems and you'd see 6, 7, 8 rats, like 1,000K off grid. The overview was in place at this point in time. But when the system met a certain critical mass of ferals at these sites, they would group together and start warping to celestials and stargates to start blapping people. So there really was a control component where if you wanted to keep a system safe, you had to fly through and clear out the sites, which was a lot of work.
Yeah. So were you rewarded at it? So we have like a big bounty system in the game right now, in EVE Online. Is there a way to just go out and make money and then spend money some way in this game, or is it really Minecrafty where it's like money is not your concern, items are what you need?
Yeah, the only money consideration you have is interacting with and the NPC stations. So out of the 24,000 systems we currently have, I think there's 38 NPC stations. And that is where you buy the lenses in order to gather advanced fuel, as well as, was there anything else, or is it just lenses, Hecate?
That's the only place you can sell the feral stuff to. That's the other difference. There's no civilization to pay you for killing NPCs. So the station is paying you. So you have to gather stuff that drops and then bring it to the station and sell it. Which means if you're not near a station, it's movement and fuel.
And the kind of lore aspect of that is the Keeper, the AI that kind of runs the galaxy and is responsible for waking you up, also runs these stations. And you're trading reconnaissance data from the feral drones to the Keeper, and he's giving you, Lux, which is the equivalent to ISK, which you can use to purchase your lenses and stuff to gather advanced fuel. So you're giving him the information on how the galaxy is doing, and he's giving you the information or the means to go get more information.
Cool. So you kind of speak about like the more greater kind of lore here. Is I know that there's like 3 black holes in the center of the galaxy or something like that, and there's like millennia, or like you said, thousands or trillions of years that like pass kind of thing of civilizations here. What is the overall, if you had to give like a general overview of like, because like in EVE where say we come from Earth, a wormhole opened up, a bunch of people from Earth, like, and the galaxy that they had conquered, the Milky Way, like they came over here, they conquered this galaxy, it shut down, the whole fucking shit went to shit, and now all of a sudden we're back into, like EVE, rebuilt all of the empires. There's the Amar, the Mimitar fighting with each other. Is there any kind of, what's the overall lore story of what the fuck is going on in EVE Frontier?
So it is considered so far in the future of the EVE universe that sure, there's kind of an argument that, Amar may have existed in this universe and that we are in the actual EVE universe just so far in the future that if we were to find a remnant of the Amar, it would be like finding in EVE a remnant of a civilization that's so old that Jove never even heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Vikings.
Yeah, like we're finding, like we would be finding the person who invented the wheel if we were to find something from the original EVE universe. But there's still inspirations, there's still signs that these civilizations existed. We can see it in some of the weapons, we can see it in some of the ship designs. In the future, we may see it in some of the naming conventions, but the overall lore is that the time of civilization and life in the universe has come and gone. There's nothing organic left, and if there is, it's being consumed as a resource by the inorganic life that still exists. And how do you put a stop to that cycle, I guess, is kind of what the Keeper's asking. Or maybe it's just kind of following its own programming where it was supposed to do a thing, and it attempts to do it every cycle, and it gets blown up by feral drones and just tries again. Maybe there's no real goal to it.
Yeah, we don't know if this was the first time that life has been restarted in the Trinary. Maybe it's not even the first time.
And the Trinary is the galaxy that you guys are in?
The 3 galaxies that are emerging.
Oh, there's 3 galaxies that you guys are...
There's 3 wormholes in the center of the galaxy, and that's why it's the Trinary.
It's it was previously 3 galaxies merging, and you can see that because there's like sort of planes upon which the stars align, sort of like an elliptic plane or whatever, and they're at slightly different angles. If you actually look at the map in depth, you can see it. Like,
they do actually use a accurate scientific model to recreate the kind of the crash of these galaxies together and the burst of the black hole and the scatter of the universe. And the way they're kind of making these maps is they're going and stop at this timeline with this spread. Let's have a civilization. And then they advance it another 30 billion years and see what it looks like. And that's how we've been rolling.
Interesting.
So there's a good chance that the galaxy or the systems and the planets and the suns that existed in the previous cycles are so old that in our new cycles they don't exist.
So when you say cycle, this is like the seasonal change, right? So when everything resets.
Yeah, that's what they're calling every reset. And there's a little bit of a lore drop every opening to a cycle where we get some sort of audio from the keeper saying, this is the start of phase X of cycle Y, and there's this threat in the galaxy. Go forth, riders, and figure out what to do. Which is some nice flavor.
Okay, so you are actually like missioned by somebody to go do something.
Or not really. Like, we're sort of set to, here's a galaxy, do what you want. So like, we don't know if the keeper is benevolent and it's just trying to repopulate the galaxy, or if it's just wanting to experiment and see what do they do when we
like when you slept in too late in the summer and your mom would wake you up and you'd be like, well, what am I supposed to do? And she'd be like, I don't know, figure it out.
I'm here, I am the benevolent, but you go do.
But you should be awake right now, I feel it in my bones.
You should go do things. What do you gotta do? I don't know, figure it out. You got it. Plenty to do. The dishes done?
I mean, and luckily a lot of us are happy in a sandbox, just shoveling dirt and trying to figure out what makes the game work. And it's been a lot of fun for those of us who really enjoy kind of being deep involvement with the game. So like that's what I would say the main benefit of getting in on the founders or the founders access or even the trials is just getting to play a game alongside the dev who's developing it. And like with EVE Online, there's a lot of people who work on EVE Online who don't even play the game, which I feel like can be expressed sometimes in some of the frustrations of the players where, hey, this isn't working, and it feels like these players, these people who are making this game don't even know what their product is. But there's the real like sense of connection with the development team, especially in such a tight-knit beta, that you really kind of feel like your voice is being heard, the game is being developed in a way that you're going to be happy with the final product.
Yeah, so it sounds like you guys are a lot more interactive. So we met at FanFest. What was your coming to FanFest specifically looking for EVE Frontier? How are you feeling about the EVE Frontier front of CCP? How are they presenting themselves at FanFest to you?
The developers who are getting to work on Frontier, I believe, truly love what they're working on. And that's the main selling point for me. There was so much enthusiasm among the core development team, and Joden does such a good job building hype and keeping the community engaged that it really does kind of tell me that they're in this one for the long haul, at least the people who are building it. And I think kind of the best we ask for these days is if you've got the freedom to develop what you want and you want to deliver a good product, and you are this dedicated, that's what we need in a game that's this complex. Even just the kind of side-by-side development, along with the efforts to open source Carbon. Someone who's been monitoring video games and has kind of been like running tangent to development cycles for a really long time, it feels different, feels refreshing, feels new.
Cool, yeah. And so we are coming up on time here, so I want to make sure that I kind of set aside a little bit of some time here. Bendery, do you have anything that you would say that is the big things that you're excited about with Eve Frontier, the future that you're kind of trying to build at this point with this game? Are you looking to build like a big giant alliance? Are you looking to just get be deeply involved? What are you planning on doing with Eve Frontier in the future?
I think it's just such a great engine for meeting new people and exploring new viewpoints. Honestly, my biggest engagement with the game has been mostly offline, and it's been on the social aspect and trying to figure out how to get people to get along in a space where they're handed a gun and told they don't have to. And I've met so many interesting people, like Hecate here has been phenomenal and been really cool to meet. And I'm in it for the community, but I also really enjoy the game. Like it's I hope to be in a position in the future where I'm able to help other people enjoy the game as much as I can, through the building of tools to kind of ease access to the modularity of the game, which is, I think, going to be the big blocker for most people is I don't know how to code. And fortunately for them, there's a dedicated community who wants them to play despite that, and we're going to build the tools to help them do that.
What would you say for coding aspect of like what are the barriers of coding? Are we talking like, is this something that I can throw into like ChatGPT and it'll like spit out the ability to give me some help here, or are we talking like actual coding where you got to like go in and know what the hell you're putting into here?
That is a little bit of a tricky question, because as we kind of develop and more documentation gets put online, AI is going to have more to learn from. But currently, since this is bleeding edge, there's not a lot to learn from. We're all learning as we go. So if AI in the future is able to start coding and making infrastructure for Eve Frontier, it's going to be because of the work that people are putting in now, producing this documentation and learning how everything works, because it really is a new system.
So for coding language, is this C++? Is this Pascal? What kind of like language are we dealing with here? Python or?
So it is definitely a stack, and I'm gonna let Hecate get on this one if he could.
Yeah. Okay. So the blockchain stuff operates on an EVM blockchain. EVM is the execution environment for Ethereum blockchains, and primarily code for that is written in Solidity. Solidity is like a custom programming language for smart contracts, which are the things that operate on top of blockchains in the EVM space. And then on top of that, you can build in the game and just do Solidity stuff, which would be like programming gates, programming turrets, creating alliance auth if you want to do something like that. I don't know if that's copyrighted or trademarked. I hope it's not. You can do a lot of other stuff just using Solidity. But there's also the additional stuff on top of that. The smart storage units, which are the storage units in the game, they have an embedded web browser in them, so that you can like operate within the storage units and do things. So the intent is like you can build any sort of service using like a normal web page, which is HTML, CSS, JavaScript, whatever framework you want to use for front-end web development. And then it can be embedded into the game in some form. So in the interface for these storage units to enable you to do whatever. People have made games that function within the storage unit, so you can play like Solitaire or Doom or like
Doom
anything
is the
really.
big one.
You
Like,
can get it to run. Yeah,
if you can
get
get
it to
Doom
run
to go on
on a
to
web page.
Minecraft, it's so.
Yeah.
Like Minecraft.
So yeah,
and Doom.
the stack is Solidity, primarily with CSS, HTML, and JavaScript for the storage units currently. And
Interesting.
Yeah.
And the endpoint API is the MUD framework, right?
Yeah, the MUD framework is the Solidity contracts that turn the Ethereum blockchain or EVM blockchains into a sort of database stack. So it has like tables and records and stuff like that, and systems for interacting with the tables and records. But that's sort of, yeah, it's a framework, not really a language, but it is something to learn. It's a niche of a niche. Doing all of this coding stuff is like a niche of a niche.
Is there any kind of translation to the real world with this?
Yeah, so if you learn the coding for how to make a bank in the Frontier, which you could absolutely do, you could make a bank, or an insurance company, or prediction markets, or whatever you want. If you learn how to do it in the game, you can do it outside of the game too, on the Ethereum blockchain for people who use the Web3 stuff. But you don't have to if you don't want to.
I mean, I just learned more about React and Node and all the other fun JavaScript languages as a kind of like a Windows baby. I had to really kind of branch out, and that's helped me a lot, even in just kind of my professional life as well, which has been nice.
And then, so Hecate, is there any what's the thing that draws you to Frontier? Is there anything that you want to talk about that you think is like your number one thing of what makes Frontiers awesome?
Yeah, I don't know. For me personally, I really like there's like two things I guess. I really like the concept of like rebuilding civilization from scratch. Like, it just seems fun. There's a lot of work. Like, we're looking at even just the projects that we've explicitly stated, or that like our corp. I'm in a corp that like wants to just try out a bunch of stuff and see what sticks and what works and what doesn't. Even just the projects we've currently outlined after like a year or 9 months of playing, like it's probably years of work for like various things you could do with the 15 odd people who are doing development stuff in the tribe. So that's fun. The other thing is the flight mechanics in the game and the combat is surprisingly compelling. It's not a overview and you click and lock and fire. There's a lot more to it in this game. Like, you have to have your ship actually, like, your ship guns and turrets and stuff have angles, so you have to angle properly or you'll miss more often. You can fly closer to asteroids and people shooting at you will have their targeting systems go haywire and start shooting at rocks. So there's like a lot more to the flight and the combat mechanics in Frontier than there is in EVE Online, and it's very fun, especially for like small gang stuff.
At this time, is there any NPC, or is it all PvE, PvP, or PvP at this point? Are there monsters to go hunt, or is there rewards for hunting monsters, or?
Yeah, currently there's just the whole game functions as nullsec. There's no highsec gonna pop you if you pop somebody thing. It's all nullsec, so PvP everywhere. It has the same sort of like drop mechanics from what it seems as Evo. Which means
50%.
Sometimes you jump stuff, sometimes you don't. Yeah. And then the only NPC like stuff in the game is drones. Some of them will attack you on sight, some of them will attack you in proximity, some will ignore you until you attack them. And yeah.
Some eat your rocks in your system, so you gotta pop them so they don't mine everything out.
Oh, so there's like...
Yeah, and they will mine it out if you leave them there.
Mining drones that are taking your shit. Like, that's funny. I could see that being something that would be more prevalent in EVE if there was a mechanic kind of more set up around instead of just reset at downtime kind of thing, where there's a bunch of drones running around just eating rocks and you gotta it's like, God damn it, go kill those drones, they're taking our shit. That's
It does kind of add more life to each system, like, because the rocks, the sites are always going to be despawning and respawning as they get mined out. So it does make things feel a little more dynamic, because even an abandoned system isn't going to look the same the next day. because of just the NPC activity. Which, I don't think we mentioned dynamic sites.
Yeah, what's the dynamic?
So this is a new mechanic that they just added to the game, but certain sites and certain feral drones will actually build their own bases within a system, and that each one of these sites has specific levels. You know, one, like, they don't tell you what the levels are, but the name will change. I think there's 5 different levels, and as it grows in power, the drops that it has, the drones that it has will they'll upgrade. So you got to kind of ask yourself this question: am I going to kind of go in and harvest this area of resources at level 3 when it's a little easier to manage? Am I going to wait for it to get to level 5? It's almost like actual agriculture, because you're looking at this crop of loot and you're like, when do I go cut this down? And their advancement is based on what's going on in the system. Are the drones actually mining? Are they able to find the resources they need to build? They're gonna bring it back to the site, and they're gonna deposit it, and that's gonna start upgrading the site. And that's one of the newer mechanics in the game that is pretty cool.
Yeah, I really wonder how far that one will go, because like if they sort of like take it out to its extremis, like we could end up in a situation where like 5-6 years from now, the players in the game are lamenting the fact that we didn't take the drones seriously and they destroyed all the NPC stations, and like that would be sick. But like I don't know if we'll actually get to that point before launch, or if we will get to that point ever. But that just sounds awesome.
Do you have a feeling at all of where the launch date would be for this game? Is this one of the games that's going to be a perpetual beta forever? Like there's the Star Citizen, you know, that other game that used to exist. It still exists. It just never came out of beta. Or how do you kind of feel with the progression that they've been doing so far? Because it sounds like they've been in beta for about 1.5 years right now.
I've been in alpha since like October last year.
Yeah, I think the official open kind of alpha founders access started in October of last year. And as far as like how do I see kind of the future going, I see going very similar to the way EVE Online is going. You know, that the EVE Forever that has been very popular, especially since FanFest, where the game isn't ever really finished. It's something we're going to play that's going to grow and change and develop, and it's a live service. So hitting the general public, I mean, now you can hop in and start playing it the way it is. If it's in a state that you think you're going to enjoy yourself, you can grab Founders Access. And in the future, I think we're going to see maybe a big announcement like, hey, come check out this new experience in Frontiers. And that's when we're going to see more of a push into the general public, when they have a game that they feel confidently that they're going to be able to meet the expectations of a fan base of a game that they want. And I think that's the only limiting factor, is them finding a satisfaction point where they're happy with the experience and they're happy with the way the players are experiencing their game.
I do wonder if they'll ship it as a matter of like needing to, from like balance sheet perspective, like their economics of their business, or if they'll do it when it's ready, or they'll do it early because they realize it will never be like perfect and they might as well just get it out of the way and learn. But I mean, in this playtest, they had more people come in than I've seen in the game before. Because all this stuff is on chain, you can see how many players have been created, how many characters have been created, and I think as of this morning, it was about 20,000. So with the free play week, it was about 20,000. I think before that, it was like 6 or 7. So in theory, there is an audience for it, though they have been marketing it more recently. But I think they've said they want to launch it next year. If they have sufficient money, I think it will probably take to the year after, but I'm not CCP, so I can't tell you.
And Nightflyer, is there any questions that you have before we wrap this on up? So we've got the experts here, so you know you're playing the game.
No real questions. I said I've been kind of following this since the original alpha release. But I want to thank you both for coming to the show. Bendery, it's great talking to you again. Had a great time in Iceland. I hope we get a chance to meet up again in real life.
Yeah, it's nice to see you all. Eve, Seattle.
Yeah, I'm thinking about coming to Seattle. I might only do like one day, but I might do like a flyover and pop in, get drunk, pop out.
Right on.
That sounds fun. I'll probably be there too, Bendery. I know we haven't talked about it, but it might be a thing.
That'd be awesome.
Awesome. And then, so before we wrap up, I always want to make sure I leave it open here, in case your mom and dad are watching, or, any kind of shout outs that you want to give. So, Bendery, do you have any specific shout outs you want to give, or any last minute statements about what you're doing, what's going on in you building a new movie, Are you starring in a new movie,
I am just still playing Frontiers. If you have any questions, want to get started, you can find me on the Frontiers Discord, or just reach out to me on Discord. The handle's just Bendery. If you think I'm cool and you want to fly with me in regular Eve, I fly with Astral Acquisitions Incorporated, and we do faction warfare and friendship fleets every weekend. Come take a look. Come hang out with us.
Awesome. And then Hecate, do you have, your mom and dad, are they watching, or any shout outs that you want to give, or, is there anything that you want to talk about before we wrap things on up here?
I would say if you're interested in looking into the game, go into it with an open mind. It's not going to be perfect. It's obviously an alpha game, but have fun. We'll see you out there.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming on here, and we're going to have a lot of fun. And then, just before we wrap things on up here, I'm just going to run a little, we do have Eve Guru. Check them out. They're sponsoring us, giving us a little bit of cash to put them on out there. So if you click on our link down on the Twitch page, on our info or whatever page, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't matter. But we do have Eve Guru. Check them out. They're kind of cool though. This is one of the things that I need to do more of in Eve, which is like marketing PvP, because that's like people are like, I'm gonna go out and rat with like 40 alts. And yeah, you can do that and pay for 40 alts and whatever, however you want to like figure that shit out. Or you can just go to the market and just make like billions of ISK, because people are fucking crazy. And like Eve is so crazy. Like the movement of items, it's like, okay, if I put up so many shit in Hade, that's like a 300% markup on like the price, or like 500%. Like you sell in the right areas, you figure shit out. There's a lot of marketing, a lot of movement of items in this game. So check out Eve Guru.
Eve is hard. Everyone is out for themselves. You try mining, manufacturing, trading, but with little to moderate success. No one wants to give up their secrets. No one wants you to win. But that won't stop you. You just need the right partner. Someone to give you the right answer every minute of every day. A tool developed by Eve University professors for the community. A tool that generates overwhelming value. A community that helps each other. Let me ask you a question. Do you want to be a trillionaire?